Hello and welcome back, or just welcome if you're new here. I'm Common Free, first time mom to Elba. Today's video is what I did to make my breastfeeding journey a success. I'm going to cover what I did in pregnancy, and then what I did in the newborn phase, and then what I've been doing to maintain that since the newborn phase. My first disclaimer for today's video is that I'm speaking about my breastfeeding journey and my experience and the things that I wanted. If I say that something is important to me or I did something in a particular way, that's not me saying that it should be important to everybody else or that other people should have done it that way. So please take what serves you and leave what doesn't serve you. The second disclaimer is that the title of this video says, make my breastfeeding journey a success. And that is what success means to me. Breastfeeding was and still is very important to me. So therefore, I did a lot of things to mitigate against risks or challenges that I've read about or heard people say, as well as did a lot of other things to try to achieve and maintain the type of breastfeeding journey that I wanted with my baby. Again, that's not me saying that this is what success means for other people's breastfeeding journey. It was specific to the achievement of what I wanted and the goals that I set out for our breastfeeding journey. Success also implies that it's over. It's definitely not over. We're in month 12 of breastfeeding, and I hope to continue to breastfeed for probably another couple of years. And on that note, let me define what success means and meant to me in terms of what I wanted for our breastfeeding journey. Right, so the first thing that I wanted was to breastfeed exclusively, and that for me meant a hard no on formula. I did not want to use formula in any shape or form. Because I didn't want to use formula and it was a hard no for me, I will discuss in this video what my what if plans were, like what if that happened, or what happens if I needed a backup source for my baby, because I didn't want to use formula. The other thing is that for our breastfeeding journey, I wanted to exclusively breastfeed from the breast, no bottles. Again, I'll discuss what my backup plan would have been if there were any issues regarding latches or difficulties with her getting the milk in. Of course, I did plan for the what if scenarios, and I'll talk about that in the video. So in this video, I'm really going to detail what are the things that I did to try to achieve it, and if there were issues along the way, what my plans were or what I had prepared to try to mitigate against that, or if I had to temporarily deviate from our plan in order to have long-term breastfeeding journey that I want. The other thing that was important to me was also no pacifiers or no soothers of any kind. And lastly, what I wanted from our breastfeeding journey and what success meant is to really find joy and meaning in the breastfeeding journey, and to at no point just persevere and push through and suffer and have it be awful in the name of achieving the other things that I mentioned. So it was very important to me that if anything was making it be a miserable journey for me, that I would look into that and to determine like what's going on here, because joy and meaningfulness on this breastfeeding journey is very important to me. All right, so let's start with the things that I did to try to make sure that I got the breastfeeding journey that I wanted, and the sort of what if plans I had if we had any challenges. Just before I get into that, I guess a final disclaimer. I'm not saying that if you do anything the way that I did, you're going to have the exact breastfeeding journey that I did. I'm not even under the assumption that if I have another baby and I do everything the exact same way, I'm gonna have the same breastfeeding journey, because it is unique with your situation, with the birth that you had, with the pregnancy that you had, and with your baby. That being said, I still hope that some of the things that I share in this video are helpful for moms who wanna gain some ideas of what they can do to prepare for their breastfeeding journey. Great, before I discuss what I did in pregnancy, I just wanna take it back all the way to preconception. If you are familiar with me, my journey, and my channel, you may know that I did 3 years of preconception before we tried to conceive. In that time, I did a lot to get my body, and my husband did this as well because it takes 2 people to make a baby, a lot to try to set myself up for a healthy pregnancy, healthy birth, healthy postpartum, and healthy baby. So the health efforts didn't start when I became pregnant. It was a 3-year preconception journey before starting to try to conceive. The reason I mention that is because I do think an important element of breastfeeding is to try to have the healthiest pregnancy that you can, as well as the healthiest birth that you can. And those things then also impact your postpartum time. a healthy postpartum. There were also things that I did there. I've linked down below the first 40 days video that I made. I honored the first 40 days as part of having a healthy postpartum period. But back to preconception. In preconception, not only did we focus on our physical health, I also looked into parenting choices, and I discussed them at length with my husband as they came up. So we weren't making major parenting or birth decisions during pregnancy or at the onset of our parenting journey, or even right now, because a lot of that research I actually did in preconception. So now when I'm doing research, I'm just sort of maintaining it, or I'm researching for the next phase. In doing that, I already knew before trying to conceive that exclusively breastfeeding was going to be very important to me. And at the time, and I still do, have my own business, but the way that I was working didn't allow itself for having the flexibility that exclusively breastfeeding may need. So already in preconception, I started to think how I could change the way that I work, how I could change my business, what are the different things that I could set up to have passive income, as well as speaking to my husband about the career choices that he makes to ensure that we're both on the same page about what is at least the first year of our baby's life and the breastfeeding journey going to look like for us. And then we started to work towards being able to set our family up to have the breastfeeding journey that I want. So now we're literally talking about choices that I made several years before even starting to try to conceive, because a lot of it has taken long periods of time and a lot of it didn't necessarily go according to plan. But from years ago already, we were both on the same page about what we want for this breastfeeding journey, and having your partner be committed to it as what you are is a thing that I want to say here that I think is something very important to prepare for the breastfeeding journey and to set it up to be whatever version of success you want it to be. In my case, I am beyond grateful to have a partner who is as committed to our breastfeeding journey as I am, because I recognize that to have what we wanted, we needed to make some household changes, as well as just a sense of appreciation that I get from him for doing what I do. There are countless times where Ian will look at what I'm doing and say, thank you so much for doing that, or thank you for caring for her in that way. If at any point she looks like she would want to feed, even though I'm mid doing something that's very important to me, I drop it and I go, he will always express like, thank you so much for going to do that. And just having somebody appreciate that, even though I know it's important to me and we don't necessarily need that appreciation, it does help and it does feel good. So I guess the recommendation that I would make is to, as soon as possible, wherever you are in your journey, be it preconception, trying to conceive, or pregnancy, or you're in the midst of postpartum or well into baby journey, I really think it's a worthwhile exercise to make sure that you and your partner are on the same page about what you want for your breastfeeding journey, and that you are both as committed to it. In general, I've not heard amazing things about breastfeeding, to be honest. The majority of the messages that I was receiving from people regarding their breastfeeding journey was hearing how it wrecked their mental health, or it was so difficult, or they couldn't do it, or they just stopped much earlier than they wanted to. So don't get me wrong, as much as I trust my body for pregnancy, for birth, and for breastfeeding, I wasn't under the illusion that all of that would come naturally and I would just know how to do it and it would just flow easily. Obviously, there's a chance that that could happen, but given how important it was to me and given what I'd heard from people, I decided that I was going to focus on preparing and mitigating against all the types of risks or challenges that I'm hearing from people. So given that I'd heard that it impacts some people's mental health was a big focus for me in preconception, as well as through trying to conceive through my pregnancy and beyond. And I did things to ensure that I would be in the best, healthiest physical and mental state that I can be. And I also compiled resources that, should there be any concerns for me, what am I going to do about it? What are my tools that I'm going to turn to, such that I don't necessarily opt out of the outcome-based choices that I want, and I'd rather find other ways to support myself. So that all being said, that's kind of like overarching themes. Let me get into the more super practical things that I did during pregnancy to prepare for my breastfeeding journey. All right, so the first one is that I nourished myself really well in pregnancy. I also tried to move to maintain a good pregnancy. I did really well in my first and second trimester, and then we did move countries, so I guess I didn't do as much as I wanted to in that regard, but it was fine. And then I had a very specific plan and preparation for birth. I'll cover that in a little bit. The next thing that I did in pregnancy is I read several books. That's my preferred method of taking in information, is to either read books or to listen to audibles. I did also watch videos of breastfeeding, and I think I listened to maybe 1 or 2 podcasts. Podcasts is not my favorite method to take in information, but the main thing that I essentially did is I tried to get information that I thought was valuable to our breastfeeding journey. So the only book about breastfeeding, as in the entire book is about breastfeeding, that I read is The Art of Breastfeeding. I think it's by the Lilita League organization. I think that that is an amazing resource. I covered it in notes and sticky notes and like what if scenarios, and I had like, I even told Ian, like, if this happens and you need to look something up, like this is how I've marked it, this is how you find the things, to be able to look up maybe ideas or tips or what we should do. Now, the reason I did that before having a baby, where other people might just wait until a scenario comes up rather than to read about all the what ifs and prepare for all of that, is I didn't want to make any fear-based decisions when I was in a postpartum period or a newly first-time mom. I didn't want to be swayed by loads of people's opinions or somebody telling me something in a time where I'm quite vulnerable. It's quite easy to get scared and then do something because this person, usually someone that holds some kind of authority, so you assume, or they're some kind of expert, so that you assume that they know more than you. That's why I wanted to prepare before the time, such that I wouldn't be swayed when people made comments or tried to tell me what to do, but rather I'd have that knowledge and I'd be able to have a conversation with them if I wanted to around whatever suggestions they were making. This one is very important because I've heard a lot of moms get scared off of breastfeeding by comments around their baby's size or whether their baby's getting in enough or anything like that. So a main focus for me of my reading was knowing how to tell if my baby was healthy and how to tell if my baby was getting enough without needing to resort to pumping or bottles, how to know if I truly needed to supplement in any kind of way, or what to do if my milk supply seemed on the lower end, or even how to tell if my milk supply was on the lower end. So all of that was well sticky noted in my book. A thing that people sometimes say to me when they see me doing the research or I'm talking about the things that I'm reading is that people will say to me like, no, but you can't control everything. Reading up and being prepared, to me, is not about control. There are things that are important to me, and I believe that certain efforts are going to make it more likely that I achieve that, and there are certain things that I can do to mitigate against risks. A big reason why I did this reading before having a baby is because when I'm newly postpartum, I don't want to be reading that type of book. I want to be basking in baby. I want to be present with newly becoming a parent. I want to focus on recovery and I want to focus on setting the foundation with my baby. I don't want to be reading a breastfeeding book cover to cover. I don't want to be for the first time learning things that I thought was more valuable to learn before I had a baby. Now, obviously, wherever we are in our journey, if we didn't do that before, then we just do it whenever we can. But that wasn't the case for me. So I did do this preparation in pregnancy already. Final thing that I did in pregnancy to prepare for my breastfeeding journey is my midwife asked me, how important is breastfeeding to you? And I said to her, very important. It's very important to me that we breastfeed from the breast as well as to avoid the use of formula. So one of the things she then recommended is that we express colostrum. This is not for everybody, I understand. And in the sort of natural sphere of doing things, a lot of people say, no, that's very unnatural, or, you know, you're not trusting your body when you do that, or variations of that. I get it. But for me, Having an alternative if there was any what if scenarios was more important than just going the full natural route. So my midwife sent a couple of resources on how to hand express colostrum in pregnancy and said to do it from 37 weeks. Some people say that it will induce labor. I don't think that it did with me because I had Elba at 40 weeks and 6 days. We were expressing from 37 weeks every single day, most of those twice a day. That being said, it's probably good to, I don't know, get some confirmation from whoever you're using to guide in your birthing sphere and your motherly intuition around whether or not this is something that you want to do. But I will say that I was grateful to have a very large colostrum stash in our freezer just in case. Thankfully, we didn't end up needing it. And also, I was thankful that we learned and got a lot of practice with hand expression in pregnancy, just so that we knew how to do that if we ever needed to do that in the actual breastfeeding journey. So it's also a connecting thing because Ian helped me to do this for the entire almost 4 weeks that we did it. So it was kind of a nice preparation and I guess intimate thing to prepare for your baby coming and then build up this little stash. So hand expression of colostrum is probably something that I will do in future journeys in terms of preparation for baby. Even though I've had a breastfeeding journey now, and even though I put a lot of trust in my body, it's important to me to have a backup stash. So my alternative to the use of formula would have, in that very initial period, have been my own colostrum that was frozen. The other resources that I had on hand is what would I do if I did need an alternative source? And I had a list of ways to source breast milk as an alternative, as well as the recipes. I think they're from Western A Price, of various formulas that you can make that have different base ingredients depending on, you know, when you're using it, what you have access to, what your preferences are, and it's got like a nutritional breakdown. So those were just like resources that I had there in case of like really what if scenarios. That was all prepared in pregnancy, and those resources were marked and Ian knew where to find them if I was not in a position to be able to tell him to look for those resources. Oh, and then the purchases that I made in pregnancy for my breastfeeding journey is I made one purchase from Haka because, you know, like everybody raves about using the Haka to catch letdown. So I bought 2 of the normal, like, original ones, as well as colostrum expression collectors. But to be honest, I actually preferred feeding syringes to store the colostrum in. But also, I didn't like using the Haka in a... And it's not purely a letdown catcher because it does have a suction function. So I did end up buying the Ladybug from Haka as well, which is purely a letdown catcher and not like a suction function. And then I had reusable breast pads. I had a lot of leaking, so for me it was good to have like many on hand. And then the other item I had was a pure lanolin to use as nipple cream. None of the sort of other ones with loads of ingredients. I wanted something that was very pure, nothing extra. It's literally just lanolin. Moving on to birth.